Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Yankees were very, very active during this trade deadline. And this bullpen may have went from a weakness to a strength just like that. Uh, they acquired David Bednar from the Pirates, Camilo Doval from the Giants, and Jake Bird from the Rockies as well in what was just a crazy day in general, where the Yankees were playing the Rays. Um, and it was a rain delay as well. And José Caballero was traded from the Rays to the Yankees. So essentially switching dugouts. So he will now be a backup utility player, really your backup shortstop now. And who was the backup shortstop was Oswald Peraza. He's been traded to the Angels. So all in all, 5 trades today. And the Yankees bring in 7 players in this trade deadline period. Ryan McMahon, Ahmed Rosario, Austin Slater, David Bednar, Jake Bird, Jose Caballero, and Camilo Doval. So very, very active. They were not able to acquire a starting pitcher. And while this was a really, really good day for the Yankees, and they are just much better, the depth, I mean, there is going to be a lot of roster decisions. Now, obviously, health doesn't always play out. It just doesn't, right? So, but still, depth is good regardless. And there's going to be a lot of tough decisions as far as who stays on the roster, roles. It's a good problem to have. Starting pitching, let's just kind of get that out the way first here. Um, it's still a bit of a concern for me. And what sucks is you had Garrett Cole and Clark Schmidt, who both are out for the season. Like, to lose both of them, right? Like, if you had even just Clark Schmidt in the mix still, then really, like, to me, you're in a decent position. Now, it's nice to have a very deep bullpen. That'll help for sure. And it truly is at this point, right? Like, even if you're pessimistic about it, there's a lot of arms out there and some that are coming back from injury as well that aren't currently in that bullpen. But look at the rotation right now. You have Max Fried, Carlos Rodon. Now, that's a really good 1-2 punch. There's no question about that. And Luis Gil's coming back. And you could hope to slot him into your number 3 spot. But look, there's question marks there. Like, I mean, he's been out for a while, right? So if he can be the pitcher he was last year, great. But you look at last year's playoff rotation, if memory serves me correct, he was kind of like your number 4. It essentially was Cole, Rodon, Schmidt as your 3, and then Gil as your 4. So again, there's no other way to look at this but say that this rotation, it could have been a big time strength if they were fully healthy, but they aren't. And your number 4 is Will Warren unequivocally, and that does give me some concern. As much as I like what he's brought to the table, he's been good at Yankee Stadium. Like, Warren, in a playoff situation, how are you going to feel? And again, it doesn't mean that, like, if he is your number 4 starter and you get to the championship series, he's going to be in there, no doubt. Like, not necessarily in the DS, I mean, look, this year they might be in the. I mean, who even knows? Actually, nothing's guaranteed at all, right? I mean, the playoffs isn't even a guarantee, but if you get there, you're going to need like a Will Warren, and then that leaves you with your 5 and 6, either Stroman or Schlittler. Now, obviously, you want Schlittler to be that guy, but I don't know what happens, right? Schlittler has options. They may send him down. He could eventually end up in the bullpen, but it's so deep right now. But again, like, the rotation to me, that I wish that they somehow could have gotten a starter. That all said, the market just wasn't there. There weren't that many moves, honestly, that would have made a huge difference. Merrill Kelly, who was a rental, was traded to the Texas Rangers. There were some other moving parts here and there, but a lot of the big names stayed. There was talk about the Yankees maybe getting Sandy Alcantara or Edward Cabrera from the Marlins. That didn't happen. Zach Allen stayed put. Not that I was that interested in him. Mitch Keller was always a long shot from the Pirates. He stayed put. I think the Yankees, they were focused, and that's a theme here, on especially the trades that were really of real value, players that were under control beyond the season. That's going to be a theme once we get into all of the moves that they made. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to start out with the one bit of somewhat concern, right? And that would be the starting pitching. However, again, on the whole, the pitching got so much better, right? And so today is much more of a positive. So let's get into that first. Let's get into the bullpen. So they acquired David Bednar from the Pirates, and this is the deal. This is the trade. It's David Bednar going to the Yanks, And then going to Pittsburgh is Rafael Flores, Eglin Perez, and Brian Sanchez. And Flores, I think out of everyone dealt today, I believe Flores was the highest on the MLB.com Yankee list. He was number 8. But obviously, these lists fluctuate like quite often, and with trades as well, people move around. But Flores, I think, was the top guy. And that kind of makes sense because out of everyone that they got, Bednar to me is probably number 1. Um, and I say probably because like Camilo Doval is very intriguing as well. But um, with Flores, he's a catcher, as is Perez. Like the Yankees are able to really make it work with catchers. It's quite impressive the amount of catchers that were either in their system all along or that they acquired and then they moved. Like it is a hotbed for that position, and you kind of see it going around the league where there's a lot of successful catchers. We've talked about them before, and using that depth as a strength in trades. And that's exactly what you see here. So, but let's talk about Bednar, but also acknowledging that again, like Flores was probably the top piece dealt today, which is also good. They didn't get rid of, a George Lombard, Schlittler, Spencer Jones, Ben Hess, um, and some of those other guys were still in the organization. And, that's a good thing because obviously they're going to be, hopefully important contributors down the road. So for Bednar, you might be looking at certainly your closer for like next year because with Bednar, he is under contract next season as well. And that's important with Devin Williams and Luke Weaver being free agents at the end of the season. Now you brought in Bednar and Doval, who were closers. Like, and Jake Bird, I think is interesting as well, right? So that, this wasn't just about this year, it's about next year too. And Bednar will be under contract next year. Devin Williams is still the closer of this team. I'm not surprised by that, like that, and Boone kind of, confirmed that. But let's be honest. I mean, even when it was just Luke Weaver, like Devin Williams, I feel as if the rope is thin and the leeway is not much, and especially like come playoff time. And the good thing is you have options now who have closed. Now here's the thing with David Bednar, right? Before we get into the numbers, like could there be like a similar situation with Devin Williams as far as issues adjusting to New York? Maybe it is possible. Like, coming from Pittsburgh, where look, there was not a whole lot of winning going on there. He was really successful for the most part, but he is from Pittsburgh. Like, I don't know, not everyone can make it in New York. So I don't want to just assume that all of a sudden he can handle that spot, but in terms of ability, he certainly can, and he's been a closer. So with David Bednar, he really has been one of the best pitchers in baseball lately. Um, and we're going to talk about Doval also. It's very weird how both of them, like, kind of similar in terms of like them getting into the league and becoming really good and then kind of dropping off, but then recovering. David Bednar was very bad last season at a 5.77 ERA. I believe he did lose his closing job at one point. I mean, he did have 23 saves last year, but I think Chapman had been on Pittsburgh last year, and I seem to recall that he was closing games at a certain point. But around that, his Pittsburgh career has been great. He was traded from the Padres. He was drafted by the Padres and traded from the Padres to the Pirates before the 2021 season in a three-way trade with the Mets, actually, where the Padres got Joe Musgrove from Pittsburgh. But David Bednar right away was great. And originally he was not a closer in 2021, but the numbers were brilliant. I mean, 77 strikeouts in 16 2/3 innings, a 185 opposing batting average and a .97 whip. Really, arguably, that was his best year. 2.23 ERA, but he wasn't the closer. And then he does become the closer in 2022. He made the All-Star team in the National League in 22 and 23. And just really good numbers. Got a heavy fastball. He's also got a curveball and a splitter. So pretty diverse arsenal for a guy that's a closer. You don't always see that, a curveball. He's got really good stuff, strikeout stuff. And I think it's good the fact that he faced adversity last year and came back, where this year he's been really good. 2-5 record, that doesn't matter. 2.37 ERA, 17 saves and 17 tries. I mean, there's a clutchness to that for sure. 38 innings, 51 strikeouts, 1.11 whip, and a 225 batting average. So just a really, really good option to have and expect to see him late in games. That's just the way it is, right? Like, you're going to see him in the seventh inning or later. I'd be shocked if it was anything other than that. So that's Bednar, the Bednar trade. You know what? I guess let's kind of go in. No, let's discuss Doval next. So Camilo Doval, the trade for him. They get him from the San Francisco Giants for minor leaguers, catcher Jesus Rodriguez, right-handed pitcher Tristan Vierling, infielder Parks Harbor, and left-handed pitcher Carlos De La Rosa. As far as the Yankee prospect list on MLB.com, I believe it was Vierling that was 19th and Rodriguez that was 25th. But I also think that De La Rosa was in some top 30 lists somewhere. Again, these, more in terms of volume here, right? With 4 players going the other way. So that, is significant. But, the top player, no top end guys as of now. So again, more of a quantity than quality trade in some ways. But Camilo Doval, this one I didn't see coming. This kind of came right at the wire. This was the last deal that happened after everything else that had already occurred. Doval, he's under contract for, of course, this season and the next 2 years. So an extra year beyond Bednar. So Camilo Doval, I mean, whether it be 2026 or 2027, like Camilo Doval could be the future closer of the Yankees. And it's interesting where same thing for him, kind of like Bednar, where 2021 was a breakout of sorts, like comes on with San Francisco and really was great right away. Bednar was really has much more of a sample size in 2021, where Doval just 29 games, 27 innings, but it's not nothing. And he joined what was a really good 2021 San Francisco club and performed pretty well in the NLDS against the Dodgers. Like, it's only 3 appearances, but still got a save. Did have a loss, but don't know the nature behind that because the numbers seem pretty good for Doval there. But he became their closer in 22, and really put up very good numbers. The strikeout numbers are elite. I mean, 87 strikeouts and 67 and 2/3 innings in 2023 is incredible. Also, the good thing on Bednar, just to go back to him, like last year, walks was a problem. And again with Doval, last year walks were a major problem, but the walks for Bednar are down, home runs are down. Like, the deeper numbers for Bednar across the board are incredible. Doval, look, he did have 23 saves last year. I think he was sent down at one point. And in fact, Bednar might have been as well. Like, I can't confirm that, but I know that Doval definitely was. I remember he was sent down. And this year, and where to the point where I think it was Ryan Walker that became the San Francisco closer for a large stretch, and they deserved it more than Doval. As far as like any Yankee head-to-head moments, I believe it might have been, let me check the game logs here. I think Soto might have had that big homer off of Doval in the 9th inning last year. Let's see here. Yes. Yep, on June 2nd. Not a great moment for Doval in what was, again, a bit of a struggling season for him last year, but has bounced back and really got his closer role back. San Francisco this year, 4-2, 3.09 ERA, 15 saves, 46 and 2/3 innings, 50 strikeouts, 196 opposing batting average, and a 1.20 whip. So a lot to be excited about with Doval. And again, like the fact that you have him under contract through 2027 is exciting for sure. Now let's talk about Jake Bird. Jake Bird, take it a step further with him as far as the years of control. You have him under contract through 2028. So this season and then 3 more with Jake Bird. Now, his numbers are not very good currently, but he was doing amazing at the time the Yankees faced the Rockies at Coors Field. And I just want to find the game log real quick here. May 23rd, Jake Bird pitched a 1-2-3 inning, had a strikeout. And at that point, his ERA was like he almost wow, his ERA was as low as like 1.41 in middle of June. And he had good numbers at Coors Field, right? So on the one hand, it's like, all right, he leaves Coors Field, that should help him. And it probably should, but his numbers this year were much better at home, actually. Um, and we talked about a little bit with Ryan McMahon, where you almost, for better or worse, you're just more accustomed to that. And so when you go somewhere else, your stats kind of take a hit, you know, even though you wouldn't think, okay, like, of course, why would, Birch put up better numbers on the road? Not necessarily. Because again, he was more accustomed to pitching in Course Field. So here you're kind of hoping more for like a Matt Blake sort of get in the lab and improve sort of thing. Um, but I think that he could be someone as well. Now, not quite to the level of a Bednar or a Doval, but like Jake Bird in terms of pecking order, he's probably in that top 5 or 6, right? Like he probably finds himself at this point in that maybe in that Loizaga range, right? Like kind of in the middle, maybe the back, just because there's so many guys. Um, but Bird, has been on the Rockies his entire career, 4 seasons with the Rockies. Um, and let me just discuss the trade real quick before getting back into Jake Bird numbers. It was Jake Bird to the Yankees and going to the Rockies, kind of a perfect name for it, Rock Riggio and Ben Shields. So Rock Riggio was in Double A. I think he might have been around number 10 on the prospect list for the Yankees on MLB.com. And then Ben Shields was like 28, left-handed pitcher, both Double A. So those two guys go to the Rockies for Jake Bird. And um, the ERA ends up kind of being around 4.5 just about each season. Um, wasn't a guy that really closed, was more, of a setup, middle relief sort of guy. Um, and look, he's really struggled lately a lot. The last, month and a half have not been good for Jake Bird, but I think that this could be an interesting get here. Um, and, you kind of heard his name in rumors a little bit, and it comes to fruition. So think about the bullpen now. Let's just kind of close the bullpen conversation. Like, I assume looking at the current roster, and this is going to fluctuate again, like there's going to be tough decisions to make, but um, Bednar, Doval, Bird probably take the spots of, for now, Delos Santos, Hedrick, and Brubaker. But Brubaker, the weird thing with him is like he doesn't have options, and you know how the Yankees are sometimes with that. So like I think Ian Hamilton does have options. So could Ian Hamilton be sent down? I think that's in the realm of possibility. And you have Mark Leiter Jr. coming back in about a week. You have Fernando Cruz is going to be back probably by the end of August. I mean, even Ryan Yarbrough, like I would think would have a spot of some sort, when he comes back. So it's a crowded pen. I'll tell you that much. And it's going to be interesting decisions, but it's nice to have these legitimate options. Like the bullpen was bad, flat out bad and taxed in some cases. So to get these guys in here who weren't with the organization, as well as getting guys back who were injured, should really, really help. This bullpen hopefully is back to being really good, but it all kind of goes back to Devin Williams again. Devin Williams, like, if there are struggles, I would be very quick to make that change out of the closer's role, whether it be Luke Weaver, Bednar, Doval. Like, you have options that can get you saves that have closing experience. So very excited about the bullpen. Then let's finish it off with some more hitter news. And Oswald Peraza has been traded to the Angels, mid-game. So kind of an awkward situation where, they told him he was traded. But he still did a post-game interview. Peraza seems like a good guy. Like, I feel bad. It never worked out here, unfortunately. And, Volpe kind of got that shortstop job over him. And Peraza this year, just in particular, was so bad. He's traded to the Angels for young rookie ball outfielder Wilberson DePena and international bonus pool money. So Peraza will get a chance at the Angels. And it's kind of funny how that works as well in terms of that head-to-head stuff. One of the memorable games I had from Peraza was a couple years ago when I think he had a 4-walk game as like a leadoff hitter against the Angels. That was when there was kind of excitement around Peraza. And he never quite lived up to it, certainly offensively, but it never was as bad as it was this year. And because he was out of options, it's part of the reason why he was traded. He couldn't be sent down. Because he was out of options, they kept him on the team all year, and it just never worked out. Really good defensive player. Again, Camp is a shortstop, but did a really nice job on the defensive side for the most part, whether it be at third base or second base. Like he has that in his skill set, but the offense, he was one of the worst hitters in the game. I mean, the at bats were really, really bad. You knew that there was a good chance that Peraza was not going to be on this Yankee roster come trade deadline time, and that is what does happen. He is traded to the Angels, and wish Oswald Peraza well. Now, who takes that spot? It's going to be Jose Caballero from the Rays. It's one of those you just didn't see coming. And he gets traded for Everson Pereira. So real quick on Pereira, and a player to be named later or cash consideration. So eventually there'll be someone added to this trade or cash. But Pereira, we saw him in 2023. There is some promise there with Pereira. He's got some pop. The Yankees outfield is crowded. So, I mean, the chances of Pereira ever really making it were pretty unlikely, right? You already have Spencer Jones kind of knocking on the door, but Pereira, you know, maybe there was if another injury occurred, Pereira probably would have been on the roster, but it doesn't play out that way. And it's interesting. He's traded in division, but don't be surprised if we hear about Pereira. I don't know. Like, I didn't think he was really all that good, and he wasn't in 2023, but that was like right on the scene. Then he had an injury. So he was basically out all last year, but he can hit home runs. He's, still pretty young and, really like not a bad get for the Rays in terms of looking at the future. As far as Jose Caballero, very interesting as far as what he brings. Not a whole lot of offense, but very versatile, and he can play a good shortstop. So because they were not comfortable with Ahmed Rosario at short, and this confirms it, right? Rosario, he will be a guy that he also provides utility and versatility, third base, second base, but not short. Caballero does. In fact, Caballero's primary position is short. And it's funny, like he was in the Mariners in 2023, and there was that incident with Garrett Cole where Garrett Cole kind of like they were kind of going at it a little bit. Caballero's got like some fire to him. He's one of those players that like is annoying to go against. Like he plays with a little bit of an edge, and apparently he grew up a Yankee fan as well. So, last year he had 9 home runs, but really like only 2 homers this year. Not a guy that hits a whole lot, right? Bats in the 220s, OPS in like the mid 600s, but he gets a ton of steals. Last year, he led the American League with 44 steals, got caught 16 times, so he's running like crazy. And then this year, he's tied for first in all of Major League Baseball with 34 steals for a guy that doesn't play every day. So talk about someone that really will make an impact, and he has options because there is a world where they send him down. Again, there is a roster crunch that is present. But Caballero, he had played for the Mariners in 2023 and then got traded in the next offseason. So for the last season and a half or so was with the Rays. So the Yankees have seen a lot of him. He can move around the diamond, mostly in the infield, but this year he played a lot of right field as well. So the Yankees are getting a lot of versatility. This is one of the better Yankee benches that I can remember that has a lot of use. For so long, it's okay. Like you have these as the bench that like just won't play unless there was like an injury. Not the case now. Caballero, look, it's hard to envision him getting many starts, but really Volpe should get days off every now and then at a bare minimum. And so that's where Caballero gets in the lineup. And if the Volpe defense continues to stay bad, I'm sorry, Caballero has to be a late game replacement at short. He has to be. I'm not saying it's going to happen now. I don't think it will. But if it continues, you have a guy. You have a guy on the roster that can do it. So Caballero will take that Peraza spot on the roster. But here's the interesting thing. Like, Aaron Judge comes back pretty soon. What happens? Like, does Austin Slater just automatically go off the roster? I don't know I don't know if that happens. I don't think Austin Slater has options where Caballero does. So Caballero could weirdly go down. There is still JC Escara, like where I could see him maybe more playoff roster wise, like making his way back. Because I like what they have with just having the 2 catchers because Escara is somewhat of a waste, but also Rice's role is somewhat unique. So, and with pitch runners, and they certainly have that now with Caballero, you have more speed on the bench, and Rosario brings you a speed element as well. Like you might need that. So I'm just curious to see where the roster goes as they get healthier. And if, assuming there's not injuries that happen, which they usually do, and these things kind of work their way out. But Caballero is definitely intriguing for what he can bring on the defensive side as well as his speed. Um, and the versatility is great. So again, a very, very busy trade deadline for the Yanks, starting with Ryan McMahon on Friday, Ahmed Rosario late Saturday night. You had Austin Slater yesterday on Wednesday, and then today, David Bednar, Jake Bird, Jose Caballero, and Camilo Doval. And now it's just coming out now. So glad that I, have kept this episode going here, that Ian Hamilton and Yuri De Los Santos have been sent down. So that's kind of the interesting thing is Ian Hamilton. I said that was possible. And so I think that's good news for JT Brubaker. But then for some reason, they haven't announced the third move, and maybe they're not totally sure that all of the new guys will be ready to go for the Marlins series, right? Or maybe it does mean that it's maybe it does mean that it's Brubaker and that he will be designated for assignment, right? But Hamilton, so one of Brubaker or Hedrick will be safe for now, right? That we know. Hey, Hamilton, it makes sense. I mean, it kind of sucks for Hamilton, but he has those options. So that is what the move is. And so this bullpen is already looking a lot different. So there it is. Yankees deadline day is complete, and it was with a lot of action. The bullpen is a lot better than it was before, and the Yankees have a lot more depth and versatility. And Brian Cashman, even though he doesn't get a starting pitcher, does a really good job.